Hello and welcome to Hammer Time, a Hammer horror podcast, part of the Evolution of Horror Network. I'm Becky Darke, a film critic and Hammer fangirl, and I'm joined by my co-host, human encyclopedia of film and TV, and Hammer superfan, Kevin Lyons. Hi, Kev.
Hi, Becky. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I should at this start, before we start, just want to say belatedly, we're recording this the week after Becky's birthday, so everybody say happy birthday to Becky, because she thoroughly deserves it.
Thanks, Kev. I will follow that up by immediately apologising that because it was my birthday last week, I took a week off, and so we have to do two back-to-back today on what is, I mean, it's not quite the heat it was last week, but it's still not exactly cool, is it? So
we were just saying that we'd closed all the doors, switched all the fans off and everything at our respective abodes, and by the time we'd finished just chatting to each other, we're already sweating.
Yes.
And we hadn't even started recording at that point, so do bear with us. We may be sort of slightly like puddles by the end of this.
Stay hydrated, everybody. In this podcast, Kevin and I are watching and discussing every horror film in Hammer's back catalogue. And this week, poor Joan Fontaine cannot catch a break in The Witches from 1966.
Academy Award-winning Joan Fontaine, star of some of the screen's most memorable motion pictures, slants a new angle on the story of the witches, the devil's own disciples.
Our Hammer Time discussions are all spoilerific, and we go into plot details and chat about the endings of the films. So if you'd like to watch The Witches before you listen to this episode, you can pick it up on Blu-ray, and it's part of the classic Hammer box set. Set us up, Kev. How did The Witches come about for Hammer? This is one that I've been really looking forward to talking about.
You've been looking forward to this, yeah.
I know that right at the beginning I said this was one of the ones I was excited about, and you sort of went, and I've had that in mind this whole time. So let's get straight into it.
Cool.
And let's talk a little bit about the production, and then we can get on to our opinions.
Oh, and that'll be a good one. There's going to be a fight this week, I can tell. So, how did all this come about? It's based on a 1960 novel called The Devil's Own, also known as The Little Wax Doll, which is quite a good title, I think, that one. Yeah. It was written by Peter Curtis. Now, I'm doing air quotes around Peter Curtis. Peter Curtis was actually a pseudonym for Nora Lofts, who wrote many murder mysteries using the Peter Curtis name and several historical dramas using her real name.
Okay.
Now, one of the fans of this book was Joan Fontaine. She'd read it and thought, this is really good. I like the look of this. I think her career was, she was Hollywood royalty.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about her as we go along. But I think her career had started to slow down a little bit. In fact, it was very near the end. And I think she was looking around and she was seeing that, people like Bette Davis and Tallulah Bankhead were doing these horror films and thinking, the whole sort of whatever happened to Baby Jane thing had happened.
Yeah.
And I think she was looking at these films and thinking they're making horror films with older women in it, sort of, Hollywood royalty. I'll try and get in on the act. So she bought the rights to the book.
I love this.
She picked up the rights. She took the rights to Seven Arts. She actually bought it, I think it's September 1962. And she went to Seven Arts, the American production company, and they'd teamed up with Hammer before. They were involved right at the start almost with The Curse of Frankenstein, in fact.
Oh, okay.
And they eventually said, look, we know just the right people for this. You need to take this to Hammer.
Oh, I see.
And so in August 1964, they take it to Hammer. Hammer say, yes, this looks good to us. We'll have some of this. And there you are. So Joan Fontaine, she was a big deal for Hammer because she was another Hollywood, Hollywood superstar, really. But she came as part of the deal. Mm-hmm. She owned the rights, so it was quite natural that she was going to play the leading role. I think she'd bought it with that in mind, that she was going to play the lead part, and Hammer were quite happy to accommodate that, I think.
I love that, because I think I assumed that a little bit like Bette Davis, Joan Fontaine had been a bit of a kind of get for Hammer. But
right.
I love that it was kind of the other way round. And actually, she was the one driving the project. That's brilliant.
I mean, she was still a get for Hammer because she was
course.
she's still a big name, a really good actress, lots of presence, lots of charisma. But yeah, she actually came to it with a package deal that she'd put together herself, in effect.
I love that.
So fair play to her. Well done, her.
Yeah, make your own opportunities, girl.
Quite right, quite right.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about the plot of the movie. Following a nervous breakdown, Gwen takes up the job of head teacher in the small village of Hedeby. There she can benefit from the tranquility and peace, enabling her to recover fully. But under the facade of idyllic country life, she slowly unearths the frightening reality of village life, in which the inhabitants are followers of a menacing satanic cult with the power to inflict indiscriminate evil and death if crossed. They really started ladling it on at the end there, didn't they?
Oh, they did. There are promises being made there that are never going to get fulfilled. I'm sorry, but there you go. They're not.
Right, I've had enough of this. Come on, tell me why you don't like it.
Oh, dear. It should be great. It has a lot going for it, especially a Nigel Kneale script, because, Hammer, they saw this as a slightly more prestigious project because they got this Hollywood star involved based on a book. Let's get Nigel Kneale back to adapt it. It's the direction that lets it down for me. We'll talk more about the director in a moment, but I think it feels a bit plodding to me. It takes an awful long time to get anywhere, and then when we do get somewhere, I find it more hilarious than frightening. I know. I'm in so much trouble. There are some days I actually think, wouldn't it be really good if me and Becky could record episodes in the same room as each other, just to get the sort of, bouncing ideas off each other more. And then there are episodes like this one where I think, thank God she's over there on the other side of London and I'm over here and I'm safe and she can't get me. If she suddenly goes quiet and I'm talking a lot, I'm going to start to panic that she's on a tube and she's headed this way.
That's right. I'm not angry, Kev.
I know what you're going to say.
I'm disappointed.
Yeah, there you go.
and a little baffled. So, okay, I've only seen it once. I came into it. I was excited.
Yeah.
You also know that I am aware that, because it's not only you that doesn't like this film. It's not a hugely well-regarded one kind of out there in, the Hammer circles, Hammer fan circles, which I was surprised about, kind of without having seen it, because exactly for the point that you've already made, right? It's this big name. It's Nigel Kneale.
Yeah.
It's very kind of classic horror fodder. We'll come on to talk a little bit about sort of subgenres and themes and stuff later. But, it's outsider comes to small village. There's supernatural or occult things going on. And so for me, sort of coming in, I was like, right, tick, 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 tick. And so I was surprised that there wasn't a sort of universal positivity about it. So I came in excited, but kind of steeled, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe it's not going to live up to my expectations that I'm coming in with. I absolutely loved this film. So not only am I not angry but disappointed, I'm a little bit baffled. I don't understand what it is. And, this is the whole point of the discussion. I'm sure you're going to tell me. And I'd love to know kind of from some of our listeners as well. Write in, tell me what it is that doesn't work for you. But I have scored this on Letterboxd after I watched it, one of the highest out of all of the movies that we've watched so far.
Yes.
And you were saying before we hit record, we sort of missed our opportunity a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Plague of the Zombies. To say that was our halfway point.
Yes, we're just over halfway through this epic trek.
Yes. So that goes to show how many of these films, that we've seen. And I have really scored this high amongst all of them.
You have, yeah. And it's the first time we've really diverged quite dramatically, in our opinion, of a film. We both, up until now, I think we've both more or less agreed as we've watched the films, with a little bit of variation here and there of what's good and what's bad. This one, when I saw your Letterboxd score, my heart sank and I thought, oh boy, this is going to be an episode and a half, isn't it?
Honestly, just like top line stuff, I thought that Joan Fontaine was fantastic. I thought it looked beautiful. I thought the supporting cast were very strong. It scared me more than a lot of the Hammer film, because we've talked a lot about all of the monsters and the Kensington gore and all of the very effective horror, but I haven't come away from many of our films thinking like, ooh, like that actually sort of got under my skin a bit. There are moments in this film that like genuinely unsettled me. Okay. And that was that was sort of on two fronts, I think, because there's we talk a lot about the sort of difference between terror and horror when we're, not just on this podcast, but more widely when we're sort of, us horror scholars, this idea of sort of terror being this kind of creeping dread and the horror being when you actually see the horrible thing, right? Yeah. And for me, The Witches ticked both boxes. I thought that there was a real lovely sense of dread, just sort of simmering beneath the surface. And then there was some of the most terrifying imagery that I've ever seen in a Hammer film sort of popped up from time to time. And I came out the end of it, I was like, I don't get it. I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Well, to be fair, I mean, a lot of what you say I would agree with. I think it does look good. I think Joan Fontaine is fantastic. And there's one particular shot in this film which is amongst the creepiest things you'll ever see. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. But there's a lot, for me, that counts against it. Yeah. Part of it is the pacing. I do find it a bit all over the place. And we will draw blood as we get to discuss the climax, because I think you enjoyed the climax a lot more than I did. So.
I genuinely think it's one of the best sequences I have seen in any Hammer film to date.
I can't get past dear old Duncan Lamont banging bones together and gurning at the camera, but we'll come to it. We'll come to it as we go along. We'll come to it.
All right, you said just now, Kev, that sort of the main problem for you, I suppose, is the direction. So let's talk a little bit about Cyril Frankel.
So I always, in my head, I've always thought Cyril Frankel, but that's literally the first time I've said his name out loud. So
yeah, exactly. This is always the problem.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
We'll go with Frankel. So Cyril Frankel. I'm not familiar at all, and I had a quick look at his filmography. This is his only Hammer film, I believe.
Not quite.
Okay. So tell me about him.
He'd made quite an interesting film for them in 1960 called Never Take Sweets from a Stranger. Which isn't a horror film, but is very much horror adjacent.
Excellent advice.
When we were working up the list for this film, the preliminary list, it kind of went on and off several times.
Interesting.
It's a very grim film about child abuse, and it doesn't pull many punches for a film made in 1960. So it's very grim. And it's very dark. He also came back in 1984 with a much lighter film. It was one of those Hammer House of mystery and suspense TV films, Tennis Court, about a haunted tennis court.
Oh my God, what? Do you know what? Right, quick aside. I love, like, a haunted sports venue.
Oh, okay.
Like a haunted swimming pool. I can't think of any others. There must be a film with a haunted golf course, maybe.
Yes.
Haunted tennis court? I'm immediately looking that up.
And as we're recording this, Wimbledon has just started for 2026, so it would be a good time to go and track that one down. I remember it not being very good, but clearly my taste in films is obviously in question this week. So,
And look, if you're somebody who proudly proclaims herself as somebody who loves a haunted swimming pool movie, then, I mean, maybe Tennis Court is on my list.
But he directed a really interesting psychological horror film called The Very Edge in 1963. It's a psycho killer type movie, which is really quite good. He also, completely away from horror, had made the absolute comedy classic School for Scoundrels in 1960.
I don't know that.
Oh, it's great. It's Terry Thomas.
Oh.
There you go. I don't need to say anymore, do I? Just go and watch it.
That's fine.
Brilliant.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's so funny. One of my favourite British comedies. Really good. And he did a lot of TV work as well. He did The Avengers, Randall and Hopkirk, Deceased, Department S, UFO. So when I was growing up, when I was a lad, I was seeing his work all the time. He was everywhere. So he never did like a big bang film. He never did something huge and spectacular. But he was described as reliable if unadventurous.
Wow, that's damning with faint praise, isn't it?
It is. And in their review of this film for Monthly Film Bulletin, they said, if Cyril Frankel's direction is a little flat, it is at least tasteful. And therein, I think, is a big part of the problem with the film for me. It's too tasteful, it's too reserved, it's too laid back, it needed to be a bit more full throttle. And when it does go full throttle, he doesn't seem to quite know how to handle it.
Interesting, okay.
When I was watching it last night, ahead of this recording, I was thinking, this was around the time, we'd mentioned Plague of the Zombies, this was around the time they were making those films. What would John Gilling have done with this? Because if you remember in Plague, there's also witchcraft in a sense. They're doing sort of, ritualistic things in the caves. There are hints of African folklore. He's got African slaves down there.
Course,
all of which is in this film as well.
Yeah.
So I wonder, how good would it have been if John Gilling, just as an example, had a crack at this instead? I just think Cyril Frankel was kind of a director from a different era almost. Although he was making films contemporaneously with Hammer, he feels like he was a director from an older time, and I don't think he quite got the way that Hammer were taking films. This feels like a film that's a little bit out of its time.
Interesting.
If you put it alongside The Reptile, Plague of the Zombies, which we've just covered, and then you see this, it's very different the way it's handled.
I just couldn't disagree more.
Oh no, okay.
I take all your points. I respectfully listen to your expertise, Kev. I just think that specific point about it feeling very out of time and it not kind of feeling Hammer or not feeling sort of contemporaneous with films like The Reptile and stuff, I would say that this feels much more, and not just because of the more contemporary setting. This isn't really a period piece, is it? It's like
it's
like
not,
The Reptile
no,
was, for
no.
example.
It's kind of a period piece now because it's set in 1966.
Of course. But at the time, it's not a gothic.
It's not, no.
But not only for that reason, not only for the reason that it's kind of set contemporarily at the time that it was made, but it feels to me much more like it's a film that is kind of coming out of that sort of mid to late 60s period than those ones that you've just mentioned have. But maybe, and this is potentially where we come back to your point about it not going hard enough or Frankel's direction kind of playing it a bit safe.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Nigel Kneale.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think maybe what I was picking up on with that, more so maybe than the direction, is that sort of... I always find, and I don't think this is a hot take, I always find that Nigel Kneale is quite a transgressive writer, right? He's always pushing the envelope and going for... well, he's so ahead of his time, right? I mean, again,
absolutely.
Not a hot take.
Sure.
And there are points in this film, sort of thematically, that I think do feel very transgressive to me. It's looking at teenage sex. There's hints at inbreeding. There's orgies. There's sort of men dressing up as priests, which I know is, sold as it being this sort of slightly comforting thing, but there's definitely something kinky going on with Alan. I'm sorry. Yeah. Do those aspects of kind of Kneale's adaptation work for you in terms of like the themes, and is it just that Frankel's direction isn't kind of nailing it, or do you think that there's something at the heart of the story that also doesn't work?
I think there's a problem with the script, but it's not with Kneale. He'd really wanted to do something a bit different when he was hired to do it. I mean, at the time, the press, the British press in particular, were full of salacious stories about suburban paganism. You know, these sort of middle-class witch cults in Chipping Norton or something, and sort of like, sort of having all sorts of wild orgies. Most of it was made-up nonsense, of course, but it sold papers. And Kneale actually set out wanting to skewer that. He wanted to do a parody of the suburban witch cult. And I think Hammer didn't want that. Hammer wanted something a bit more serious. And that's not what they ended up with. They ended up with this sort of halfway house thing, where there's a little bit of Kneale's sort of cynicism and his satire is left. I have to think, we will talk about it in more depth when we get there, I have to think that the end sequence, the climax, is definitely a leftover from Kneale, because the only way I can see that is a satire, the ending of the film. What he was trying to do, there's a quote from him, he said, I read the book and I thought it was all right up to a point. That's so Nigel Kneale, that, isn't it? All right, up to a point. The interesting part for me was the very ordinary-seeming country setting, with all its double meanings and sinister things popping through occasionally. And some of that is still in the film. Some of that is still there. But he wasn't happy with the way it turned out. In fairness to the film, Nigel Kneale was rarely happy about anything the way it turned out. He never felt that anything he did was actually realised the way he wanted to. Now, I think this one, because he'd wanted to do something stranger and more satirical, I think there's this sort of conflict in the script where you can feel he's desperately still trying to do that, but it also feels a little bit like, to me, like somebody else has rewritten parts of it.
Yeah.
There are parts, there's a lot of his obsessions in here. You know, the big Nigel Kneale thing about the conflict between rationalism and superstition.
Absolutely. I love it at the end as well, or towards the end, when Stephanie Bax is, she's sort of done the big reveal and she's doing a big sort of villain monologue to explain to Gwen what's going on. And she's comparing kind of witchcraft and like sort of satanic power to like the H-bomb.
That's right,
and she's using these old ancient texts that she's researched and translated, but she's recorded them all on tape, and so she's kind of playing them off of a sort of reel-to-reel like tape player. Yeah. And there's something so Kneale in all of that to me, this kind of push and pull between, the ancient, I'm thinking like sort of stone tape and stuff.
Exactly,
right? These ancient sort of occult, very esoteric kind of ideas, and bringing it right up to date and kind of comparing it or capturing it with these very sort of modern technologies.
Well, it always reminds me all the time of Arthur C. Clarke's very famous saying that any sufficiently advanced technology will look like magic to a less developed society. And it feels a little bit like that, she's sort of okay with this modern technology, but when you look around at the other villagers, they all seem to be living in the 1800s. There's a few cars around, but you don't see them watching much television. And at the end, the kids, we're going to jump right ahead now, but at the end, when Gwen is made the headmistress of the school, they've had installed speakers in the classroom. And the kids are amazed. Oh, are those speakers? Like they've never seen them. Because, their little village, their little community was so backward. And this is where you get those sort of hints of this sort of nihilism, as it were. Not nihilism, Kneale-ism.
Lovely.
Very good. I like that. I'm going to have a sit and have a think about that one, because I'm quite pleased with that one. I just made that up off the top of my head. So I'm going to be quite smug about that. Anyway.
You should be.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, they sort of, there is that sort of push and pull between the modern and the ancients, and that's very much a Kneale thing. It feels a bit watered down to me. I wanted more of that. I wanted Gwen to be much more of a much more modern woman, perhaps, much more sort of au fait with modern technologies and all the rest of it, and just to have that sort of head-on collision. We'll see him do things like that, not through technology, but through the use of science versus superstition in a terrific TV play he wrote called Murren. Have you seen Murren?
No, I haven't.
Brilliant bit of folk horror, fantastically good, about a young doctor who arrives in a small English rural town, and all the people in the town think this old woman is a witch. And there's this fantastic scene where he tells them, we don't go back. We know stuff now. We don't go back. We don't go back to the old ways. We know stuff. It's better. And I think I just wanted more of that from the Witches. I wanted more of that clash, more up front. And we don't really get it.
Again, I disagree. I would say that Stephanie... sure, that isn't coming from Gwen.
Sure.
And Gwen is... She is a sort of a modern woman in the way that she's travelled. You know, she was teaching in this mission in Africa, even when she was there. So in the opening scene, we get her and a couple of her sort of helpers at the school, the sort of local men who obviously work at the school with her, sort of packing everything up in a frenzy.
Yeah.
They are very superstitious and worried about what's happening with the sort of tribal uprising and the witch doctors. And they're sort of saying things like, he'll eat your soul. And she's saying things like that don't happen. And she's learned, you know, sorry, every time I say that word, I can't help thinking of Homer Simpson, where he's like, no, it's learned.
Very good.
There's this talk about her sort of collaborating with Stephanie, who is this very well-respected kind of academic and columnist in the Sunday papers. And, you know, so she's very intellectual. Sure, you're absolutely right. You know, she doesn't seem to have a lot of interest in sort of modern technologies. But you do get that through Stephanie, and that kind of push and pull between her being very kind of, you know, she is this successful professional woman in the 60s who is well respected in her own right, both within her sort of village and more widely sort of through her work. And then she is looking back to the kind of where she can get the power. And I love this thing of what she is saying about, I'm coming to the end of my own life, and I'm only just feeling like now I am learning something, and I can't stop now, you know, I need even just another 50 years. And this is where you get the kind of central conceit of her having to kind of transfer her mind into this younger body so that she can continue her work and her practice. And so I think that when I was saying just now about what you do get with that sort of nihilism of the kind of H-bomb stuff and the tape players, but mixed with these ancient Mexican sacrificial knives and these old texts that she's translating.
Right, yeah.
It's Stephanie where I found that bit the most satisfying.
Yeah. I think, she's the one that sort of brings that, which is quite interesting. I wanted Gwen to do more of that, to be honest. And I think they don't do any favours to poor old Joan Fontaine, the way she looks in the film. Her hairstyle seems to, again, be from an earlier period. She doesn't feel as modern as the character actually is, if you know what I mean. She obviously is going out and doing some great things, and she's obviously a terrific teacher. The kids love her. Really kind of, you know, internally she's quite modern. Externally, she looks like she could have been in an Elvis Presley film from the 50s, you know? It's like, it doesn't quite match. I don't know whether that was deliberate or not.
That dress that she has on in the final scene, that incredible sort of psychedelic floral number, is one of the best. One of the best shift dresses I've seen in any 60s film. Yeah, it's amazing.
I'll give you that. That last dress is really good, but it's like, she finally, after everything she's been through, she finally gets with the programme, Grandma. And
she's finally got time to do some shopping.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. I mean, I can't imagine there's that many sort of groovy shops in Hadley anyway, but, you know. Exactly.
She's finally had time to go up to town.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go on then. I'll let you have that one. But I still I still have some issues with this sort of thing. I just
with the way she's styled. Yeah, I see your point.
In some ways, I'm feeling a bit mean here because I'm doing what I hate other people doing. I'm reviewing the film on what it isn't, rather than what it is. Because I just think when you see those words written by Nigel Kneale, I kind of expected more.
Yeah.
Difficult to put my finger on exactly what I was expecting, but I was expecting more.
Do you think that's maybe because he has adapted it rather than it's come out of his own brain?
I think, yeah, it was an adaptation. But then, he did some really good adaptations. He's like he wrote the script for The Woman in Black in 1988.
Oh, well, that's a really good point. Which is one of the best. Yeah, do you know amazing. What? Shut up, Becky. You're talking
Shut
nonsense.
up, Becky. Yeah. Just shut. Somebody turn her microphone off, for God's sake. But it's also, I think, the fact that it wasn't what he wanted to write. So I don't know how much he rewrote the script or how much it was interfered with by other writers at the time. But it doesn't feel to me like it's not Kneale at 100%. There's still some really good Kneale stuff in it, but not nearly. Do you like that? Not nearly enough for my liking.
There's no stopping him.
I'm on fire. I mean, literally, the heat is really building up in here now.
So you used the term folk horror just now when you were talking about Murren.
Yeah. It's on the DVD. If you can still get it, it's on the DVD with Beasts. That terrific anthology series that Kneale wrote in the 70s, which I would highly recommend to anybody who wanted to see Nigel Kneale at his best. And it's an extra on that. It is amazing.
Yeah, I desperately need to pick that up because I hear about Beast all the time.
Terrifically good.
And am yet to actually see any of it. So I really, really do need to pick
We'll
that
do
up.
another podcast another day where I will talk about my reminiscences of seeing that as a youngish teenager and being absolutely pants-wettingly terrified.
So you used the term folk horror, and I know that we don't love that term really here on Hammer Time, just because not because we don't love the term, but because it wasn't really a thing when these films were being made, right?
That's right.
The films, the art was there, but it wasn't kind of all sort of grouped together under this heading folk horror. But
that's a very recent thing, isn't it?
Exactly. So, as a useful shorthand. Do you think, and the trouble is I have all these questions and I'm like, do you think it works in this way? Blah, blah, blah. And I know that your answer to all of them is going to be no.
No, you're bloody wrong. No, shut up. Don't argue with me. No.
But if we were to kind of think about The Witches that way, and we were to look at it kind of under the folk horror banner, if somebody was to say to you, like, could you pop it in a subgenre, would you call this a folk horror film?
I think so. If we're going to accept that witchcraft is part of folk horror, then of course, absolutely. And it's sort of, Kneale was a very clever writer. We know that he was a terrifically intelligent man. He would have researched this subject within an inch of its life. He would have known, and we see that in the film. There's a terrific, one of my favourite parts of the film is the black cat that keeps popping up. He's not very faithful to its owner because he just keeps wandering off and doing things, but he can take instructions. So we got this whole sort of light-hearted bit about the cat being the witch's familiar.
Yeah.
Which I think is really lovely.
Before we move on from the cat, what a chonky little guy.
Oh, the cat and the dogs, I'll talk about the dogs as well. They're in my sort of favourite bits of the film, but they are terrific. They're such good little performers.
So perfect. I want to pick him up and put my face in him, He's so fluffy.
And then he would lure you off to a coven somewhere, which I'm pretty sure you wouldn't mind, to be honest. But
I'd love it.
In fact, you'd be like, how did it take you so long to do this, Putty Cat?
Yeah, exactly.
Why have you made me wait so long? But, so you've got all that. You've got that trappings of witchcraft in it. So he clearly understands what it meant, and he even spells it out, doesn't he? There's a nice exchange when Gwen's talking to Stephanie, I think it is, and she says, what we admit we believe, and what we believe, I suppose, could destroy us, which is almost a kind of, it's almost like sort of that should be the mantra of folk horror. is what we believe could destroy us.
Yeah.
You look at something like Witchfinder General. Those women are being destroyed because of what people believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
You look at Blood on Satan's Claw, it's the same thing. That little group of kids is being destroyed because of what they believe.
Yeah.
The strength of their beliefs. So I think, Kneale, brilliant writer that he is, hits it nail right on the head. I do wonder, and this is something you can help me with, I do wonder if it's a bit of a male take on witchcraft. There's another line from Stephanie that says it's a sex thing deep down, of course. Mostly women go in for it. Older women, they relish the idea of a secret power, especially when their normal powers are failing.
Yeah.
No wonder, is that something that women would feel, or is that something that Nigel Kneale as a man thought that must be what older women think?
Yeah. I think that there is a lot wrong with that line, to be honest, for a couple of reasons. I think that firstly, no woman that I've ever spoken to who is interested in witchcraft is an older woman who has suddenly gone, oh, my back hurts.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll see if I can get some power from somewhere else because my osteoporosis is playing up. They are, I think, to the letter, to the person, of people who I know who actually practice witchcraft are all younger women, who have an interest in it almost from childhood. There's something slightly inherent in some, not just women, but we're talking specifically about women in this context.
Yeah, of course. Yep.
Something inherent in some women where that kind of childhood play of going out into the woods and quote unquote making potions or casting spells. There are sort of little rituals that everybody does, things like holding a shell up to your ear to hear the sea. Like, these are all,
that's right,
where sort of the seeds of true practice and witchcraft actually comes from. These very everyday little rituals that just very much make up part of our lives, especially when we're kids. And often what happens is it'll be sort of slightly browbeaten out of us. And then as you start to mature and come more into your own confidences, you might sort of reclaim it or rediscover it or sort of look into it again and try to pick it back up and maybe do some more kind of conscious practice around things. So there's that for one thing. And secondly, I would say that even the focus on this idea of witches being these older women, the fact that Granny Rig is the sort of little town witch who's doing these poultices and has the cat familiar, is really short-sighted in the fact that it very much goes back to this idea that back around sort of the coming back to Witchfinder General, the witch trials, that these were these older women who may be living on their own on the outskirts of town and so are therefore somehow untrustworthy, but also at the same time they have spent a lot of years kind of learning, say, midwifery or sort of herbal practices and things like that, and have this sort of healing side to their lives, which is then, sort of used against them. This idea of these old women, these old crones kind of dancing naked round fires. Like, it's all just such an old-fashioned way. And I agree, quite a male way of looking at witchcraft in general. And so, also, Jesus Christ, the other line that I almost spat my tea across the room is when they're doing the pageant at school. And Jesus Christ, talking about Gwen being old-fashioned, when she says to Linda, oh, well, Right, so they're doing this play about, like, inventors for the school pageant at the school, and Linda's very upset because she has to play Galileo, and Miss Mayfield says to her, oh, well, there aren't many parts for girls because not many girls invented anything. I was like,
Nigel, mate, what are you doing?
What's the thing to be teaching your children?
That scene and that line that I quoted about, you know, the mostly being older women looking for a way to replace the powers that they had in their youth, they both jumped out at me as being really odd sort of takes on you know, the whole subject. Because if you remember, I said he was looking at these sort of press reports about suburban paganism and wanted to sort of lampoon those. Now, those were almost always full of younger women, these articles. Of course they were, because they were trying to sell newspapers. They weren't going to, you know, they were going to put old farts like me in the newspapers. They were going to put, you know, sexy young things in there. Also, it's 1966. This is, you know, to quote a song, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. The kids are tuning in and dropping out and all the rest of it. And they're getting into the occult and they're getting into, you know, sort of the older ways again. They're reviving notions of witchcraft. And this was younger people doing it. And so, Nigel, did you not notice that it's not just old women anymore? It's actually the kids are now doing this. Mm-hmm. That's what's driving this whole sort of resurgence of interest in paganism and the occult and all the rest of it. And it's the younger people. So it just felt like a really odd line that it was just, you know, mostly women going for is older women. They relish the idea of a secret power, especially when their normal powers are failing. I mean, what does he even mean by that?
It's so
male, isn't it? It is.
Patronising.
Yeah.
It's so male. It is so patronising. And I genuinely think it's, like, inaccurate. Whether we're talking about, you know, supernatural witchy powers, as we are in the film, or if we're talking about just sort of ritual practice in everyday life. I think that it is just extremely short-sighted and patronising to the female character.
When I was watching it, I was thinking, I know I'm a man, okay, so I'm not qualified to talk about this really, but that seems a bit crap to me. I'm like, well, thank God you're here.
And
thank God you're here.
I think it's really weird that both of those lines that we've just pulled out about both, you know, what you're saying that Stephanie says about the witchcraft and Gwen says about the fact that not many girls invented anything. Jesus Christ, have you ever heard of Ava Lovelace?
Well, quite, for one, yeah.
Yeah. Is that I find it unlikely that either Gwen or Stephanie, as the characters and women that they are in this film, would hold those opinions.
No, exactly.
And I know that Stephanie almost is specifically living what she's saying, because later, as I say, she admits, well, I am, you know, I'm getting older, I'm reaching the end of my time and I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
And so I need a younger body so that I can continue. So I know that there is this sort of specificity in her case, but I do not believe that as a learned and you know, we're led to believe that she sort of researches and writes these very in-depth sort of treatises on things and puts them in the sun. You know, I just can't believe that she would think that as a character.
I think maybe if they'd rewritten the line and put it later in the film when we knew what she was up to,
maybe it wouldn't have stuck out so much.
Yeah, I relish the idea of a secret power, especially when my normal powers are failing.
Yeah.
That would have tied in nicely with this whole I want another 50 years. As an older person, I get that. You know, I've reached an age where I am thinking, shit, I could really do with another 50 or 60 years because I've only just learnt all this stuff and now I want to do something with it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you know, the end is not exactly in sight, but it's, you know, it's a lot closer than the beginning. So I get what she's saying with that. But I just found that line about the secret powers just was stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, exactly.
To me.
It did to me as well.
Yeah, and it just felt like, this is a man writing here. a woman writer would not have written that line, even in 1966, I don't think.
No.
Although I've not read the book, so maybe it's from Norla Lost.
Well, yeah.
I don't...
Maybe he lifted it verbatim. We don't.
Maybe. And I'm hoping now, as I've suddenly realised that, I'm hoping now that it's not in the book, because otherwise I'm going to look like a complete git, aren't I? But it won't be for the first time, it won't be for the last. So there you go.
Before we move on from kind of the folk horror side of things, where do you think the sort of African folklore around sort of witch doctors fits in to the sort of, and how it sort of bumps up against the English witchcraft? Because I said just now that, there's talk of Gwen and Stephanie sort of collaborating
That's right,
on this article. And the whole idea around that is literally what I've just said. So this idea of Gwen's experience with witch doctors in Africa and when she was at the mission over there, and what they are now kind of witnessing with the little doll. There's a lot of stuff about dolls in this film. You get the much more sort of African. I don't want to call them voodoo, but
they're fetishes, aren't they? They're fetishes.
Exactly.
They're ritual fetishes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect word. And then the little Barbie dolls that are having pins stuck in them and their heads lopped off.
That's right.
In the English countryside. And what I found interesting about the use of African folklore in the film is it seems much more, I guess, in comparison to, say, Plague of Zombies, where the I can't remember what his sort of title was now. He's not a baron, is he? Squire. Thank you.
Yeah.
Where the squire has, travelled widely and he's brought these practices from Haiti back to England, back to Cornwall, and he is now he's basically sort of lifted them and he's doing them in Cornwall. That isn't what's happening in The Witches. The African stuff seems very much more to be around sort of terrorising Gwen because of her sort of PTSD almost off of the back of her nervous breakdown after what she experienced over in Africa. And so it's sort of used to terrorise her with things like the feather duster. Oh my God, I could have cried with laughter. It's so funny. So it's not, what I'm trying to say is they haven't used it so that Stephanie has sort of gone away, brought all of these other practices back to England and is now sort of replicating them there. There much more seems to be this kind of parallel thing, I suppose, going on, where you've got the African stuff with the witch doctors, you've got the English stuff with Stephanie, and both of these things sort of seem to be happening concurrently but aren't necessarily kind of causal, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That does make sense. I think it's interesting that the African sort of witchcraft stuff, the African folklore stuff, we see it really being used against Gwen by the Africans only the once.
Yes.
In the opening scene, which is a terrific opening scene, I have to say. Really good.
It's really scary.
Good. That is a really good jump scare when that
it's so good.
When that giant mask thing comes through the door. You think, Jesus Christ. But that's really good.
That's the most incredible costume. It's like it's a whole the whole person is a mask. It's amazing.
That's right. Yeah. It's incredible. But then when we see, these references to it later on, it's white people using that against another white person. Mm-hmm. There are no really significant black characters once the two guys at the beginning leave.
No.
Once they're out the window, that's pretty much it. We don't see black people again, and so it's not...
I love it when they just leg it out the window. They're like, no,
bloody stupid white woman, you stay here if you want to.
Exactly.
We know which side our bread's buttered, and it's not in here, we're off, goodbye. But no, that's great. I love that sequence at the beginning. But it is interesting, isn't it, that it's actually a kind of cultural appropriation thing.
Very much
that the white witches have stolen the black folklore because they know it terrifies Gwen.
Exactly.
They haven't stolen it to use it as such. They're not trying to do the sort of witch doctor practices at all. They're just using the sort of trappings of the folklore as a weapon against one of their own, basically. So it's kind of an interesting sort of dynamic. It's not the black characters aren't in it, you don't really see 2 or 3 of them. They're not presented as being sort of gibbering wrecks at all. They're sort of, deeply religious people, and something deeply religious is happening to them and they don't like it. And that's fine. That's cool. That's great. Mm-hmm. But I think when we get back to Hadderby, it's not a sort of, oh yeah, we're all going to speak in sort of cod African and use all these curses that we've got from them. It's just like, yeah, okay, we know this woman had a bad incident in Africa. We'll use the trappings of the folklore.
This is it. I find that really effective. I think that's a really interesting use of it. This idea that they have literally chosen Gwen because they know she's vulnerable.
That's right,
because they know that she's had this nervous breakdown after the uprising.
Yeah.
And you don't actually see specifically what happened to her after the big masked man bursts through the door.
Yeah.
But you could assume that, she was, sort of attacked and rescued and, flown back to England, etc.
Sure.
And so they literally choose her because of that, because they know that she will be an unreliable witness. Mm-hmm. If she should so ever, think to sort of talk about what's going on in Hedderby. And then they use the aesthetics of the African witch doctors to sort of gaslight her, really.
That's right, yeah. Don't you think there's kind of an element here as well of the psychological horror films
big time
the Hammer were making? You've got this woman who's being persecuted, being driven mad by by people who we don't understand at first who they are, and they sort of trusted people who are close to her and all the rest of it. There's a conspiracy to drive her insane.
Yep.
And it's yeah, I mean, it's quite an interesting thing that they tried to sort of mix the... I think it's more of a psychological horror than it is a gothic horror.
Oh, I don't think there's an element of gothic in this one for me, personally.
Even the supernatural is kind of muted until the very end.
Yeah.
It's kind of kept under wraps. And right until the last few minutes even, we could honestly say there's nothing supernatural or gothic-y about this at all. It goes that way a little bit towards the end. Mainly it's psychological. We're not entirely sure how stable Gwen is ourselves.
Well, she's not stable. That's the point, isn't it?
That's the point. She ends up in a nurse rest home, doesn't she?
I find that, honestly, that entire bit I found absolutely terrifying.
Right.
And this brings us on quite nicely, actually, to where the sort of horror comes from in The Witches. And what I was saying at the beginning, this kind of... this terror and horror, because I think you're absolutely right that there is a lot of drawing on the Hammer psychological horrors that we've been talking about, and mixing that really, for me, effectively with the folk horror elements, because you've got this the sort of gaslighting of Gwen, sort of making her think by the use of these sorts of props and, as I say, sort of aesthetics of this thing that traumatized her so badly and caused her to have a nervous breakdown. Alongside, as you say, that kind of conspiracy element of the folk horror, this kind of, this closed community, the outsider coming in, who can she trust? I found, and I think for me, when you talk about the kind of direction and the pacing, for me, the thing about that was most effective was I didn't know who to trust at any point during this film, just like Gwen doesn't. So I couldn't tell if it was the butcher or or whether it was, the Baxes, whether it was Stephanie and Alan. I couldn't tell if it was Granny Rigg. I couldn't tell if it was maybe Dr. Wallace, Mr. Rigby. Leonard Rossiter turns up, which I was absolutely delighted about.
Oh, of course. Any time he turns up, he's magnificent, isn't it?
All the way through, I was thinking, I do not know who to trust, just like Gwen doesn't know who to trust. And there's this dread for me. And knowing how vulnerable Gwen is, knowing that there is this sort of gaslighting, this psychological thing, this dread sort of running as this scene throughout the film, and then having those moments of genuine horror. The other one that it reminded me of slightly with that section, when she's got the amnesia and this idea of the friends kind of paying for her to be in this nursing home, was Hysteria. And then how she then plays that, you know, she's still got the amnesia even after her memories come back. And so I really loved that kind of interlacing of the psychological elements and the folk horror elements of the kind of conspiracy and the closed community and the witchcraft going on beneath the surface. And then you get the really scary moments. Can we talk about the cat thing?
Oh, Christ, what is that?
Oh, my God.
I mean, like, a cat in a bag.
Kevin.
It's really creepy, actually. It's really weird that it's in a film that I find a little bit staid and a little bit tame. That's a hell of a shot. That's a real jolt.
I literally said out loud, alone in my living room, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so there's the lovely cat who we've already talked about.
Yeah.
And someone, we assume Stephanie or one of the members of the cult, has put the cat in a bag thing, but then the bag thing has got like a head and these two little legs sewn onto it. So it's, and then it's got Linda, the little sacrifice. It's got her sort of picture then pasted onto the head of this thing. And because it's got the cat in it, and obviously the cat isn't exactly delighted about this situation, it's kind of jerking around as it's trying to get out of the bag. And so you get its little sort of legs and heads and the bag kind of flopping and jerking around. I have never, like, this is the most scary thing that I've ever seen in a Hammer film yet. It sent literal chills through me. I never want to see it again. I thought it was horrific.
It's very unsettling because it's quite clearly organic.
Yeah.
But it's not moving in a way that suggests what that organism is.
I know. I mean, I thought it was a rabbit. I thought they were going like full folk horror, and I assumed it was going to be like a bunny rabbit in there. Because
we do get a very nasty scene, don't we, of them skinning a rabbit in the butcher's shop. Which is
very nasty. And poor Gwen.
I know, yeah. Well, as a long-time vegetarian, I was right on her side in this scene. Like, the look of disgust on her face, you know, it's like, oh, my God.
Look, I am a rabbit lover.
Yeah.
100%. You know, my online handle is Bunny.
Yes.
Bunny is kind of my nickname. I've got multiple bunny and rabbit tattoos all over me. So have little pet rabbit. Like, I'm obsessed with them. It's why Mike can never get me to leave his house, because I'm like, I'm not here to see you. Can I just play with the bunnies again? Exactly.
Of course.
And so I was not a vegetarian, but as a lifelong bunny lover, I was equally horrified by the bit in the butcher's, and poor old Gwen has gone in there to, you know, get some meat for her supper, I assume. And he literally, I mean, Duncan Lamont literally skins a rabbit. I mean, there's nothing sort of stagey about that. Like he either knew how to or has learned how to skin a rabbit, because he does it in complete view. There's no like close-ups of the hand where they brought in a professional butcher.
No.
He is doing that, and then he gets the skin off of it. Sorry, Mike, because you're editing this. And like flicks it, and poor Gwen just recoils because it looks like it's about to hit her in the face. It was horrendous.
Yeah, that is really quite nasty. That and the cat.
The other bit that really shocked me, actually, is when Mr. Dowsett, so we've got these kids at the school. We've got Linda, who is the 14-year-old who is being sort of protected selected by the villagers because she's going to be the sacrifice, right? So Stephanie is going to put her mind into Linda's body. And then she's got this lovely little boyfriend called Ron, played by Martin Stevens. I should say that Linda is played by Ingrid Balting, or I think she's credited as Ingrid Brett.
Yes.
Who I thought was superb, actually. I really liked
her. Really good. Yeah.
Really good. Yeah. And she's got this cute little boyfriend. These two kill me. Ron Dowsett. And he's very smart. There's this whole thing about him Miss Mayfield gives him this special test to sort of prove how, smart he is. And then there's this talk about him maybe being sent away to a sort of special school. But the parents don't want that, especially Mr. Dowsett, played by John Collin, who has always spent his life in Hedderby, right? And so there's then this whole thing, because they're so worried, because coming back to the teenage sex thing, they're so worried that Linda and Ron are going to get it on. Because they can't get him sent away to school, it's either Granny Rigg or Stephanie, I think it might be Stephanie, puts him in this kind of coma, this enforced coma.
Right, yeah.
So he gets carted off to hospital. And when he eventually comes round, because Mum, Mrs. Dowsett, played by Carmel McSharry, goes and basically strikes this bargain. And she says, look, if you let him wake up, I'll take him away. So they get rid of him anyway. It's all fine. Linda's virginity is intact, so she can still be sacrificed because she's got to be pure. And Dowsett is left behind. And he goes to kind of confront the coven about this, and they kill him, right? They drown him in the lake. And then they find him. They literally parade his body through the village. And this isn't like we've seen in the past. We get a lot of kind of funeral processions and stuff in Hammer films. But they have got him, still sodden, mud-caked. His eyes, I think, are open, and he looks like he has just died. And they have got him face down on a stretcher as they parade him through the streets. That, I thought, was another just absolutely chilling moment that went way harder than it had any need to.
One of the things that does disturb me in this film is during that very sequence, some of the villagers are shepherding children towards the body to get a better look.
I noticed that.
As a kind of if we don't obey Miss Stephanie, this is what's going to happen to us. Learn your lesson. Oh, my God. And that bit is, I do think that's actually a really nice, and I'm assuming a directorial touch rather than, I don't think Kneale would have written that. I think that's something that Frankel would have thought up on the day.
Yeah.
So fair play to him for that. That does actually work. There's a couple of other moments of horror. They tend to be a little bit restrained again. There's talk about Linda having her hand put in a mangle, which happens off camera, which she then recovers from rather quickly. So it kind of leaves me thinking, did they actually put her hand in a mangle, or have they just told Gwen that?
Yeah.
That confused me, because Hammer at the time would have had no problem showing us the fingers going into the mangle.
Or at least,
if not the actual squishing of it,
At least showing it afterwards, because even when you see her on the sofa, she's got it in a sling, hasn't she, that completely covers everything.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Kev, that it is a little ambiguous, and I think I lean towards that's a tale. I don't think it was actually done. Right,
yeah. It could go either way, couldn't it? I've never been sure whether they actually did that to her or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
If they did do it to her...
But I agree it's ambiguous.
If they did do it to her, they're a bigger bunch of bastards than I expected them to be. But if they didn't do it, then that's kind of a bit bastardy in a different way.
It's interesting.
Because that's just piling the psychological agony onto Gwen.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I think it could very much be that. But there is an interesting relationship between Granny Rigg and her granddaughter, Linda. Because one of the kids is warning Gwen through kind of a secret note slipped between exercise books that Granny Rigg is cruel to Linda, and they spell cruel CROOL, which I thought was a very nice touch.
Yeah.
And then when Gwen goes round to kind of check up on her, there's this very sort of sweet relationship between them, and you sort of think actually they seem quite happy and jovial together. But then there's these kinds of little sly looks and little fibs, about, we've told Ron where to go, haven't we, Linda? And Linda says, yes, Granny, yes, we've told him where to go. And then, the next scene, she's running around, holding hands with him and all that kind of thing.
That's right, yeah.
And so, and then at the end, when Linda's been taken, Granny Rigg does seem genuinely upset. She's gotten drunk. She sort of says, I don't know. No, that's right. They say, she says, I don't know where she is. And then she spies Alan out the window and says, she's gone, she's gone away. She's gone on like a little trip or something. And so there's this kind of ambiguity and kind of, I think, almost within Granny Rigg, she's got this fear, potentially loyalty, potentially belief that is kind of playing into her letting Linda be offered up. But at the same time, there is this kind of maternal or sort of like grandmotherly care over her after all. And so I agree, I'm not really sure where like the mangling would kind of play into that quite complicated dynamic.
Exactly, yeah. So is it just something they're trying to sort of horrify Gwen with, but to what end? I mean, she's already suspicious of these people. She didn't need anything else to make her suspicious.
Yeah, I agree.
It's kind of an odd little diversion. But there are a couple of other horror moments which I think are worth a mention, if you don't mind. One is that when Gwen wakes up and finds the fetish on the bedside cabinet, I think it rather anticipates the Hand of Glory moment in The Wicker Man.
Yes.
And in fact, the whole film, in a way, anticipates The Wicker Man. Small rural community with their old pagan ways, the outsider coming in, it's there, isn't it?
Where's the girl gone,
Where's the girl gone? Yeah, it's a search for a missing girl.
Yeah.
I don't find the ending of this one quite as devastating as The Wicker Man, but, we'll come to that in a moment.
Look, I like The Witches. It's no The Wicker Man. All right, come on.
It's no The Wicker Man. Nothing is quite The Wicker Man, particularly
precisely
that ending. If you're one of those odd people listening to this on episode 30, whatever it is, of a British horror film podcast, if you haven't seen The Wicker Man, for God's sake, go and watch it before someone like me comes along and tells you what happens at the end. Because, honest to God, it will ruin you for the rest of your life, that ending. It's extraordinary. But I think that the sort of elements of that in The Witches, it's almost like Kneale was creating the blueprint for what a lot of what would follow. I
couldn't agree more. And in fact, I was thinking it earlier and was a little bit too afraid to say it in case you stopped recording with me.
Right, that's it. I'm off. She's talking nonsense.
How could you possibly compare this?
The other thing I think was, this actually made me laugh, but this is only because what we've been looking at in the last couple of weeks. Dr. Wallace, the great man himself, wants to pack Gwen off to another rest home in Cornwall. With all those zombies and reptiles about, I should think not. Come on. I mean, if we've learned nothing from Hammer films in the last few weeks...
Talk about out of the frying pan into the fire.
Into the fire. I know. It just made me laugh. At the time, I don't know how much it would have made people laugh because they would have seen the Cornish films sometime before. But because we only watched them very recently, the last week or two... I did think as soon as they said Cornwall, I thought, no,
anywhere but
Cornwall. Cornwall. Sorry, Cornwall. We've said this before. You are a gorgeous county, lovely people, but my God, in horror films, no one goes to Cornwall and comes back alive.
Let's just talk about some of the performances and some of the cast here. Let's start with Joan Fontaine, just because as you alluded to earlier, Kev. You know, she is Hollywood royalty. Have you got any sort of highlights before we talk about her as Gwen Mayfield? Or in fact, we've pretty much already talked about her. We have talked a lot about it, yeah. But in terms of Joan Fontaine herself and her performance as Gwen, I think she's extremely good. Outdated hairstyle or not.
Yeah.
But have you got any other favourites of Joan Fontaine's films that other people could seek out?
Well, she's a fascinating woman, really. Her real name was Joan de Beauvoir de Havilland, and her sister was none other than Olivia de Havilland. So this is a proper royal dynasty we're talking about here. She was at this time making this film, a bit of a fading star in Hollywood, but she'd been a big deal once. She'd been Oscar nominated for the second Mrs. De Winter in Hitchcock's Rebecca. In 1940, and she won the Oscar the following year for playing Lena McLeodlaw in Suspicion, again for Hitchcock. So, you know, she was a proper big deal.
Yeah.
She was working with some of the big names. Her career stalled rather in the early 1960s after a couple of decades, but there's excellent work like The Constant Nymph in 1943, which earned her another Best Actress Oscar nomination. She did the 1944 Jane Eyre. You know, Ivanhoe, 1952, Tender as the Night in 1961. She's made some amazing films. I could recommend any one of these to see her at her peak. She's an incredible presence.
Yeah.
It may be, I wonder if Hammer reined in a little bit of their excesses to accommodate Joan Fontaine. You kind of get the impression that Betty Davies would have been, let's go for it. Let's make a Hammer film. I kind of get the impression Joan Fontaine might have been, we're not going to have too much of that blood and gore, are we? In this, could we just hold it back a little bit? But unfortunately, this was an attempt by her to get that late burst of extra filmmaking in her career. Didn't work out. Unfortunately, it turned out to be her last big screen role.
That is a shame, isn't it?
So it's kind of the end of her career. But she's very, very good in it. No matter what else I can say about the film, I really like her. She really makes me believe in Gwen. It really makes me believe in the torment she's going through.
I completely agree. And I think that for me, again, talking about that nursing home sequence, that, as I say, just really, I found it very disturbing. There's that incredible scene with Leonard Rossiter when she first wakes up. And at first, because she can't remember anything after the mission, right, after she was in Africa.
That's right.
So she's completely lost everything that happened in Hedeby and in the intervening time. And I wonder if that is a psychological amnesia, sort of brain protecting her thing, or whether that is supernatural. They've wiped her memory to kind of get, all of the Hedeby stuff out of it so she doesn't go poking her nose back in.
Well, I think that's pretty much a nihilism as well, isn't it? That ambiguity. Is this the supernatural, or is this something that once upon a time we would have thought of as the supernatural that we can now explain?
Yeah.
Because we've got psychiatry now.
Yeah.
So we can understand that.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I like that ambiguity of it. When he then tells her that it's been more than a year since she left Africa, and she can't remember what's happened in between. There's not an element of vanity in Joan Fontaine's performance in that moment. She is wild-eyed and wild-haired, sort of pulling at her hair, running her hands through it.
Yep.
She's in this very sort of very sort of dowdy kind of 1960s kind of I don't know, sort of dressing gown and little sort of nighty kind of situation. She's hardly got any makeup on. She's gurning and sort of pulling at her face. And that, to me, was one of the scariest, more sort of psychological moments of the film. Because she genuinely feels like just completely bereft and like she's about to lose her mind.
Yeah, no, she's so good in it, actually. She's one of the best parts about the film is seeing her performance. If she thought, horror films are a bit beneath me, I've worked with Hitchcock, she doesn't show it.
No.
She gives it full throttle. It's the only full throttle thing in the film is her performance. It's like, I wonder if Frankel was sort of like, we're reining the horror a little bit, but I'm not going to try and tell an Oscar winner how to do her job. So I let her get on with it. And if that is the case, fair play to Cyril Frankel, because he does get a superb performance out of her by letting her be what she wants to be, I think.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's really good.
We've got Kay Walsh as the big bad, Stephanie Bax. And again, coming back to this idea that I was talking about earlier of me sort of, the film really keeping me guessing and not knowing who I could trust and not knowing who was in on it and leading it and, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Kay Walsh really kept me guessing all the way through. I was like, is she one of the good guys? And then, I mean, it's called The Witches, and, you know, she's sort of... But it could have been all down to Granny Rigg. It could have been somebody else. And I thought that she played that sort of academia, sort of pally sort of with Gwen sort of thing really nicely, sympathetic and sort of telling off the doctors and that kind of thing. I thought she played that great. And then when she does go batshit and off the deep end, again, I thought, I know that you think it's very overwrought and you don't like it, but I thought she was great.
I will say, I think she does give Fontaine a run for her money here.
Yeah.
And I have to say that's quite extraordinary, because by all accounts, Joan and Kay did not get along.
Really?
There was a lot of friction between them, apparently.
Really?
Now, again, you don't see it because they're professionals.
Yeah.
You know, these were old hands. I mean, Kay Walsh had been signed to Ealing in the 1930s, so she'd been around for a long time as well. They were able to, as soon as, you know, Cyril Frankel shouted action, they were able to put aside whatever animosity they had with each other. I'd hate to think what happened when he shouted cut, but on screen, they work really well with each other. Really well. And I don't think that had they got a sort of slightly weaker actress than Kay Walsh, I don't think you'd have been able to carry off that is she or isn't she thing. That ambiguity about whether she's a good guy or a bad guy. Yeah. I think it's the fact that it's Kay Walsh that keeps you guessing.
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Because she's so good. Yeah. She wrong-foots at us every turn, to be honest. She's terrific. I've always loved Kay Walsh, and I have some doubts about decisions she makes towards the end of the film, but most of her performance is really good. Yeah.
We've got her brother Alan, played by Alec McCowan. Little bit of a non-entity. I mean,
he is a bit.
There's some really odd stuff. This is what I was saying earlier about the slightly more right. He poses as a vicar. Yeah. So he keeps turning up in this dog collar, and when we first meet him, he turns up in the dog collar, and then poor old Gwen gets very confused when she gets to Hedderby at first, because she's like, where's the church? And people keep saying, oh, there isn't a church. And it turns out that Alan had wanted to be in the clergy, but he'd failed. And so now he just likes to play organ music on his big speakers in his living room. And sort of surrounded by sort of religious icons, and likes to go about in a dog collar. And I was like...
Yes.
I was like, yeah. He's, I find it comforting. Yeah, I'll bet you do, mate.
Yeah. He's up to no good, isn't he, behind the scenes, that man?
Well, I don't know about up to no good, but he's definitely enjoying himself.
I think he's up to no good as well, to be honest. So, there's something about him.
Yeah. We've already talked about Ingrid Balting or Ingrid Brett as Linda Rigg, and my God, is she good.
She's terrific, isn't she? She's from a little bit of film production royalty herself. She's the stepdaughter of the English filmmaker Roy Balting. And so therefore step-niece to John Balting, the famous Balting brothers, who made some amazing British films. This was her first screen role. She was about 19 in this when she shot this.
That's a relief, considering she's meant to be 14 in the film and some of the stuff she gets up to.
Oh, yeah, it's a bit saucy in places, isn't it? So, yeah, rest assured, guys, she was 19 years old. And I think sometimes, in fairness, she does look 19, sometimes.
Yeah.
I think, that's inevitable and probably a good thing, given what we see happening in the later, parts of the film.
It makes it a little less uncomfortable when she's writhing around and doing particularly saucy dance moves on a sort of stone altar in a satanic basement.
Those dance moves, they actually were kind of tailor-made for her, really, because she actually trained as a ballet dancer.
Is she?
So, can't you tell? Can't you tell she's got that elegance, she's got that sensuality, the way she moves around the set at the end. She's, as far as I'm aware, she's the only trained dancer in the entire film.
In some ways that does surprise me, for reasons we'll come on to, but it doesn't surprise me that she is trained, if that makes sense, because...
she has an elegance, the way she moves.
She does! Yeah. She does. There's something, I don't know... that you get sort of like muscle memory if you're a dancer, the way that she moves in that sort of ritualistic sequence at the end. You can tell she's trained.
She is, yeah, definitely. She's terrific. I really like her in this. She's really
good.
Really good.
And we'll rattle through. We've got so her grandmother, Granny Rig, who we've mentioned a couple of times, is played by, my goodness, right, this is a Welsh name, so I'm going to butcher it.
Good luck.
Gwen. How do you pronounce a double F in Welsh? Gwen Thrancon Davies, I'm going to go for.
And as we bid a fond farewell to our Welsh listeners, who we've now
thank you for coming,
massively insulted by destroying their beautiful language. It's a
beautiful language.
I must admit, in my head, and again, this is the first time I'm ever saying her name out loud, I've always imagined it's Gwen Franken Davis.
Right, okay.
So I'm afraid I have nothing to offer there in terms of pronunciation. I can offer that we're going to see her again very soon in The Devil Rides Out. Only a small part in that, but she could be back among the Satanists before you know it.
Oh, my God, yes.
Yes.
That makes me happy because I think she's very good as Granny Rig.
She's really good.
As I was talking about earlier, I think she, again, talking about, I think so many of the characters and the performers in the film are treading that line of the ambiguity all the way through it, and really, for me, kept me guessing that whole, is she a goodie, is she a baddie, is she somewhere in between, is she in a situation she can't get herself out of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I thought she was great. So I'm excited to see her again. And Leonard Rossiter, obviously, we've mentioned. But
I mean, this is the man who... he was Rigsby in Rising Damp. He's Reginald Perrin in the Rise and Fall of Reginald Perrin. He was the voice of Boot in the animated series, The Perishers, in the late 70s. He also had a small role as a Russian scientist in The Greatest Film Ever Made, or to give it its slightly more prosaic alternative title, 2001: A Space Odyssey. So if it's not Doctor Who, I'm going to crowbar in 2001. You know that's going to happen.
Yeah,
so.
Good. But yes, I mean, it was just, I hadn't noticed him on the cast list, I think, because he's probably a bit sort of further down. So when I just sort of brought up the pages on Letterboxd or IMDb, I wouldn't have seen him on my screen without a bit of scrolling. And there, all of a sudden, he was. I was like, Mr. Rigsby. I was so delighted.
So good. We ought to have a quick shout out as well for Martin Stevens as Ron. He was the leader of the alien children in Village of the Damned, and he played Miles in The Innocents.
Oh my God!
This was his only Hammer film. And his last film, in fact, before he decided to jack in the acting game, wasn't for him.
Holy shit, what a little legend. He played so many creepy kids.
He specialised in them, didn't he? But then, I think Ron's actually quite a sweetheart, really.
He's so lovely.
He's so
I think
lovely.
It's very mean what they do to Ron.
It is. And quite creepy in effect that we don't really know what they do to him.
No.
It's left very vague as to what they've done, but whatever it is, it's clearly not very nice.
No, I know. And it is cruel.
Yeah.
Because, this lovely young lad from a, as you've, said, Kev, this sort of slightly backwards English village, is obviously the kind of shining light at the school, and Gwen arrives and sort of recognises it in him and gives him the test, etc., etc. And, you know, he doesn't get a chance to shine because all of a sudden he's carted off in an ambulance because somebody's put a curse on him.
I know. Yeah, he's sort of cut down in his prime, literally, the poor little bugger. He's, yeah, and it's a lovely performance as well.
Yeah, he's
it's
great.
A really lovely little performance.
He's great.
You do believe that him and Ingrid are this sort of slightly sort of naive, slightly awkward sort of teenage couple. Mm-hmm. You believe them.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do, actually. It's sweet. And yeah, because he buys her a little... It's so cute. He buys her a little boy doll to go with her little girl doll.
That's right. Yeah, like the two of them together as dolls.
Oh. And it's like got little dark hair like him as well. It's completely adorable.
Ron, you're amazing. We love Ron.
It gets used against him. It gets decapitated and pinned, the poor little thing.
That's right, yeah. So it does make you wonder if that's what they did to the doll, what happens to him?
Well,
having seen that. Well,
I don't. Yeah, I mean, we assume he doesn't get decapitated. But...
We assume so, but you know, is there a sort of, I don't know, a metaphorical decapitation?
I know.
Just, horrible.
Hopefully, you know, Mum will nurse him back. She's whisked him off to her parents, so he'll be all right.
Yeah.
Right, let's talk about the big dancing elephant in the room.
Before we do, can I just mention 3 other actors very quickly?
Oh, of course.
We've got to talk about the Creeks. There's Michelle Dotrice as Valerie.
Yes.
She's on her way to become the long-suffering Betty Spencer in Some Others Do Have Them. But before we get there, she's going to be...
to be fair, I never used to watch Some Others Do Have Them because I absolutely detested it. But I didn't realise that was who played Betty. That's amazing.
But she was... Betty. Yeah, that was her. But before we get there... She's got 2 much-beloved British horror films to make, both in 1970 and Soon the Darkness and Blood on Satan's Claw.
Who is she in Blood on Satan's Claw?
So she's back in folk horror territory. She's in Blood on Satan's Claw, yeah.
Is she one of the kids?
She's one of the kids.
Amazing.
Her mum is played by Sheila Fraser. Mm-hmm. Very prolific actress, but she has been immortalised for one role and one role only, really. She was the doomed Aunt Beru in Star Wars.
Aunt Beru!
Oh yeah,
Uncle Owen.
Aunt Beru is in The Witches. And also I want to give out a little shout out because I think this man should be mentioned more often, all the time in fact. Mark, who's one of the Africans we see in the opening sequence, they're not credited, but one of them is national treasure Rudolph Walker, who... You'll know him, some people will know him from Love Thy Neighbour, which was a very problematic programme, but I've always stood up for it in a sense because the black guy always won. Mm-hmm. But he was also in EastEnders for many years. And I don't know what character he played because I'm not a fan of EastEnders, to be honest. But Rudolph Walker, look him up. The minute you see his CV, you'll be thinking, oh my God, I've seen about 90% of that.
Hold on.
The man... is a legend. I think he may still be with us. I hope so. He's an amazing... He's one of the...
Oh, my...
You recognise him now? Yeah. One of the most instantly recognisable black actors in Britain. I mean, he's just incredible. I love him in everything.
Oh,
and there he is.
He was in the Thin Blue Line for years
That's
as well.
right. Of course he was. Yes, of course he was. He was brilliant in that, wasn't he? I love him.
He played... Patrick Truman in EastEnders,
right.
And I say played. The Wikipedia page says 2001 to present, so it looks like Patrick's still in it.
Bloody hell! It's but quite right. Rudolph Walker should be in everything. I absolutely adore the man. He's terrific. He's so good.
Oh my God! I didn't recognise him in that opening scene. I love that.
Very youthful, obviously, in that. But yeah, he plays Mark. He's one of the two assistants who leg it out through the window. So just watch it again. Watch the beginning of it again. You'll think, of course it is. There he is. Yeah. So, yeah, big shout out to good old Rudolph Walker. We love him.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch the beginning, middle and the end of this film because... I think it's really, really good. Now we should talk about one of the greatest dance horror sequences in cinematic history.
Oh, my God. I can't believe this. How can I argue against this kind of logic? I mean, it's just like... Is it just this rather unedifying sight of middle-aged British actors cavorting about quite awkwardly on this sort of fake cave set that they've built? It's hilarious. I mean, I give it 10 out of 10. It is really, really funny. Like I say, I do suspect this is what Nigel Kneale was trying to do all along, to make these people look idiots, to make them look hilarious. But it's kind of... Oh, it's terrible. I'm sorry, I hate it. It's the kind of camp that Hammer was always accused of being, but very rarely was. And this is absolutely... Why are all these villagers suddenly dressed so shabbily and covered in muck? Do I miss something every time I watch this film? Which is not, I'll be honest.
Okay, I'll give you that. I don't understand why they are all their clothes are torn and they're covered in mud. I don't. Yeah. That was confusing to me. I felt like there was a bit in between that was maybe cut.
Yeah. So, some explanation has been removed, hasn't it?
Yeah, that was confusing. I agree. But for me, I know that you said earlier that. Linda is the only one who had any sort of formal dance training, as far as you know.
Yeah.
And I have no evidence to the contrary. But for me, it didn't feel like a bunch of middle-aged English character actors cavorting about. I thought that the choreography of it was really good. And actually, there's something about the way that they're all sort of moving in unison. And the slightly more sexy bits, there's an incredible line from Stephanie earlier when there's a couple of blokes stood up sort of on the hill looking at the house.
Yeah.
And Gwen spots them and Stephanie says something like, oh, yes, they're waiting around for it all to begin. They're probably hoping for a bit of an orgy. There is this kind of this sexuality about this dance where they're all moving in unison. They're obviously entranced to Stephanie and part of this ritual. They'll all sort of kind of do I don't know, something that looks ritualistic, and then it'll kind of break for a moment and they'll all sort of be all over each other and they're sort of squeezing fruit juice all over each other and you're laughing.
I'm sorry, I'm cringing.
You hate every moment of what I'm describing. Yeah. And I was watching it and I was like, this is so good. It's like, it's proper dance horror. I thought it was brilliant. And I do agree that when Linda comes in, she stands out. But for me, that didn't show them up as being not as good. It just kind of elevated her to being like, in quotes, kind of the special one, right? She's the sacrifice. She comes in. She's got to be at the centre. And so she's kind of doing like, I don't know, these sort of special like ritualistic moves or whatever. And all of the kind of, as you described it earlier, the banging bones together and gurning.
That's the moment that loses me. I love Duncan Lamont, but that huge great close-up of him banging a pair of bones over his head and gurning into the lens. I just think, for God's sake.
Doesn't it just show, like, how far these villagers have gone, how mad they are, how completely entranced and enthralled to this ritual and this, this sort of high priestess that they are.
I think it shows how far Cyril Frankel has got at this point, to be honest. Look,
okay.
Becky,
we're not going to agree.
You are a very persuasive woman, but not today. Okay. Not today. I'm afraid I can't get past this end sequence. The rest of the film is actually not bad at all. It's just when we get to this moment, I'm just thinking, please make it stop. Oh. Please don't do this. Don't do this. When Ingrid comes on, it picks up immeasurably because there is that sort of real sense of sensuality with her, as we discussed. But the rest of it I find really difficult. And then the capper. The absolute capper, quite possibly the worst line that Nigel Kneale has ever been attributed. Gwen cuts herself and says, at the moment of sacrifice, let no blood be spilled. Well, how's that supposed to bloody work then? That's a funny kind of sacrifice if there's no blood spilling. What?
Well...
Yeah, come on, you've got to have blood. You're going to sacrifice this bloody poor young girl and steal her life force. How are you supposed to do that with no blood? Madness.
Kevin Lyons, come on. sacrifice doesn't have to be a blood sacrifice, although it is, I admit, confusing as to why she has gone to such effort to get an ancient Mexican knife if she's not going to cut anyone with it. But
exactly, you're talking yourself around to my point of view.
The in quotes sacrifice is Linda, right? Like, you don't have to cut her. Like, she is sacrificing her soul and her mind so that Stephanie can take over her body. And the reason that Gwen speaks that line is because for some unimaginable reason, Stephanie has spent about 48 hours showing Gwen every line of the ritualistic text and playing her translations on her little tape recorder so that she basically learns it inside out. I was so confused. I was like, why are you telling her all your secrets? You are a bad villain.
She's the ultimate Bond villain, isn't she, at this moment? It's like, let me sit down here, Mr. Bond, and not kill you for getting me in my way. I'm just going to sit here for 20 minutes and explain exactly what I'm up to so that you can stop me. It's like...
She's Cyclone from The Incredibles. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. You caught me monologuing. Like, so funny.
The whole end sequence does it for me, I'm afraid. You will not persuade me otherwise. It's, I think up until that point, the film is... okay, it's good. It's this final sequence, it just pushes it over the edge, and I just think, if I'm supposed to laugh at it, then great. I'm really enjoying it because I laugh at it a lot. But, oh boy, I don't think I'm meant to laugh at it. I'm sorry. I don't think you are, because I wasn't. I didn't find it funny. I thought it was really, really good. And if anything, rather than it being the thing that sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, for me, it's the cherry on the cake. Well, I think we're about 33 films in on this journey. This is the first time we've actually disagreed fundamentally about a film, so we've done all right so far. I mean, I hear everything you're saying. You're wrong, but I hear everything you're saying.
I knew that was coming.
But no, it just, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one.
Agree to disagree,
yeah. And, I'll be interested to see how this gets, the reaction this gets when this goes out. Which side? Are you coming down for Team Kev or are you coming down for Team Becky?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see.
I might set up a little thing on our Instagram where, like, you know how people can like literally sort of write on the stories. I might set one of those up and let's get some quantitative data up in here, please.
Right, I'm going to start rounding people up when this goes out. Right, come on, boys. Because I know a lot of people who don't like this film.
Stop it. Let's talk about some favourite moments to wrap up. I mean, the incredible dance sequence, as far as I'm concerned, is definitely one of my favourite bits. But there are a couple of just really funny lines that I want to draw attention to. The first one is when Gwen first arrives to the Bax's house and Stephanie invites her for a drink. And this is the kind of friend that I like. So she walks in, she goes, "Can I get you a drink?" She says, "Oh, yes, please, thank you." And she says, "Okay, right, well, we've got gin." And then she says, "Oh, and there's another bottle of gin." And then she goes, "Oh, would you look at that? There's more gin."
Hey, we've got you pegged, lady. We've got you pegged. We know what you like.
Got me absolutely pegged. But it's just so funny. There's no mixer or anything, so it's like, I don't know.
That's right.
It looks like it's about 12:30 in the afternoon. She just pours them these shots of neat gin out of one of. I think she chooses the Beefeater. If I'm using my eagle eyes.
Ah, well spotted. Well spotted.
And the other one is, there's an amazing bit when Gwen is in the nursing home and she says, one of the other little old ladies who's kind of in the nursing home says to her, "Oh, you're the one that's lost your memory." And Gwen says, oh yes. And she says, "Oh, and what's the matter with you?" And she says, "I've got veins." Yeah,
that was one of mine as well. I thought that was a lovely... I love those creepy old people at the nursing home. They're hilarious. Really good.
Any others from you, Kev? Can you bear?
Yeah, the other stars of the show. Oh, no, they're the other stars of the show. We've mentioned the cat, who, of course, is gorgeous. But also the dogs. Dodo and Badger, the German Shepherds. We had German Shepherds when I was younger.
Oh,
I loved
really?
German
Yeah, they're
Shepherds.
beautiful dogs.
If I lived in a big enough flat, I would have a German Shepherd tomorrow. But, you know, a German Shepherd in my front room, the state it's in, that's a recipe for disaster. But I love them. I love the sheep stampede that they cause to tide the tracks, which I think is hilarious, but also quite creepy.
Agreed.
That they sort of cover the tracks of the people who've drowned the father in the lake by stampeding sheep across it.
It's clever.
Which is very creepy, but also really funny. I think he's meant to be creepy and funny.
I think it is as well. That was definitely the bit where I was like, I think I was texting my Aunt Rose about it. I was like, I'm watching the Witches, you know, Joan Fontaine, blah, 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 blah. And I said something like, poor old Joan Fontaine can't catch a break. And then I texted when I saw this, I was like, oh my God, she's just been trampled by and sort of thrown over in the mud. I was like, Joan Fontaine put herself through some stuff for this film. I know you were saying earlier, you know, maybe they had to rein it in a little bit for her, but she, like I say, very little vanity in this performance, I would say.
Yeah, considering she was kind of in effect the instigator of the project.
Yeah.
She, you know.
It also, the other bit about the stampeding sheep is it reminded me a little bit of what we get later with like the Omen films. So again, this idea of kind of, I don't know, I'm not even convinced that there was a villager there who just sort of like herded them down there. I think they might have been like taken over a bit, you know, like the...
Oh, no, it's the dogs that round them up, I think. I think the dogs are as much familiars as the cats.
Oh.
And I think it's the dogs that have been sent to do the job.
Oh, I see. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so that's why it's creepy to me that they got this control over all these animals.
Exactly,
very
yeah,
scary.
it's good.
But also give a shout out for the real star of the show, which is the village of Hambledon in Buckinghamshire, which is where it's filmed. So one to add to our list of... when we do our much talked about Hammer tour, we need to go to Buckinghamshire to Hambledon. You'll have seen it before. It's in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It's on Death on the Nile, The Legacy from 1979, Lucio Fulci's The Black Cat. It's a village in that. It's in Sleepy Hollow. So this is a big stop on our little grand tour, I think.
Oh, lovely.
And it is a gorgeous little village, isn't it? It is really beautiful. So
really, really beautiful. Oh, and actually, one thing I do want to call out, and you've just reminded me of it, is above the little general store, they've got one of those incredible old green and gold Hovis signs.
That's right, yeah.
Which, to any of our English listeners who grew up in slightly more provincial places like I did, those Hovis signs are pretty ubiquitous in villages around, towns and villages around England and the UK. Yes, it was just a lovely little twitch of nostalgia for me seeing that, because we definitely had one in Farnham where I grew up.
Right, yeah.
All right. We are in disagreement about this one, Kev.
We are.
I think we're still friends.
What do you mean still friends? We never bloody were. I just put up with you, that's all. Anyway, do carry on, my friend.
My heart, how could you?
I mean, how could anybody be friends with a git like me? I don't know.
Let's see if we can put the nail in the coffin, shall we?
Go on,
Where
then.
are you ranking this?
Well, you know, I was originally tempted to put it in lower, but I can't bring myself to rate anything written by Nigel Kneale that low, and it would also have put it in the same company as The Old Dark House, and it's nowhere near that bad. It's nowhere near that bad. I think for the most part, it's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's just the ending that ruins it for me. So I'm going to put it in middle, and I'm going to put it fairly middle, I think. So just a bang average middle.
Okay, good.
Go on. Get it over and done with. Go on. Not listening. La, 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 la.
I'm putting it in elite.
Oh, good God.
Because it's genuinely one of my favourite Hammer films that we've watched so far. I absolutely loved it, and I gave it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd.
I've come over all peculiar. I'm having a bit of a turn. Right, OK, here's a little advert. We're now looking for a co-host for the remaining episodes, because there's no way I'm putting up with this nonsense for much longer.
Oh, I'm so proud of myself.
Oh, I can tell. I can hear it in your voice.
Thanks for listening to Hammer Time. We'll be back next week with our old friend Baron Frankenstein as he conquers death once again in Frankenstein Created Woman from 1967. If you're watching along, you can pick it up on DVD and Blu-ray, and it's in the Hammer box set. To check out the full list of movies we'll be covering throughout the podcast, head to evolutionofhorror.com/hammer. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us questions or comments for upcoming mailbag episodes. Drop us an email to hammer@evolutionofhorror.com. You can follow the Evolution of Horror Network on Instagram at EOH_network and on BlueSky at Evolution of Horror. You can follow me on Instagram and BlueSky at Bunny Darke, and on Letterboxd, I'm Becky Darke. And Kev, where can people find you and your work online?
You can find me as EOFFTV, which is the name of my website. You can find me as that on BlueSky, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and Letterboxd. My website is EOFFTV.com, or you can search EOFFTV Review to see what I really think of The Witches, because I've reviewed it on there as well.
Don't forget to rate and review us on your podcast app of choice. Thank you for listening. Join us again next week for another episode of Hammer Time.